Hey everyone, welcome to episode 5 of Chats with T. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by a powerhouse in business strategy. She's a seasoned leader, a speaker, a storyteller with over a decade of global experience across industries like remittance, telecom, payments, fintech, and blockchain. She's driven revenue growth, scaled customer acquisition, and led expansion efforts and built high-impact partnerships around the world. With a strong background in project and account management, technical pre-sales, and global partnerships, she brings a rare mix of strategic vision and hands-on execution. Get ready to learn from someone who knows how to navigate and thrive in the fast-paced, ever-evolving industries. With that, I'd like to welcome Grace. Grace, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sometimes I hear that bio that I had a chance to write, and I'm like, girl, is that you? Okay.
Cool. Definitely an impressive bio, and I'm sure we'll get into that as we get to learn more about you and get into your journey. So I'd like us to start from the very beginning. I know you've had a remarkable trajectory from studying architecture to being in fintech leadership right now. What are some key decisions or moments that shaped your journey? We can start from early childhood experiences.
So when I was a child, I was like mainly confused. So I wanted to be a doctor at some point. I wanted to be a nurse at some other point. I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to do business. I wasn't quite sure when I was younger. And then when I got into high school, I started passing my exams. I was really good at math. I was really good at sciences. And I was also really good at art and music and business. So it was scattered everywhere. I wasn't quite sure what it is that I wanted to do. So my background is that my father was an architect, and then my mom was a banker slash PR person, PR marketing person. So I was like, since I'm already smart and I'm really good in physics and math, why not just go and study architecture? Because it was a balance of science and art for me. And that was something at the time that I was very interested in. So finished high school, got admitted to JQuat, went to study architecture until I realized that this is an accident. It was mad. When we got to structures and the engineering part of things, it was not the physics that I did. It was not Bernoulli's principle, whatever. It was much harder. But then now in architecture, what really helped me is there was a lot of concept development. Like before you actually design a building, I know that today a lot of buildings are boxy, but before you design a building, you have, let's say, a cob of maize, and then you cut it into half, and then you look at what design can you capture out of it. Now, that understanding on how concepts work is what I even applied now when I got into the business side of things. But before we get into that, I ended up doing a job at some point after my fourth year. I ended up doing a job with this Rwandan NGO. They were building out a university in Kigali, and it was going to be funded by some NGOs in the US. And I got a chance to do their project management. So I got to map out the entire scope of it, not really do the drawings, but map out how it would work with the person who was doing the bill of quantities to assign how much budget they would need. And that for me interested me more in terms of just project management. After that, I kind of had down kind of valley moments in my life where my mom passed away, and I was like, okay, what else can I do? Because I think part of the grief influenced my pivot. And I was like, I'm really good at project management, and I'm really good at planning things. I'm really good at organizing things. How about I just go and do a small certification in project management? After that, I got my first job, and I started doing a lot of corporate events, and I started working with international companies like Google and Safaricom at the time. Before now, I got into the actual telecom space, but I worked with them on a lot of the corporate events planning, a lot of conferences, a lot of mapping, a lot of organizing people, and that in itself made me scale. And as I worked with the international companies, I was like, I want to work for international companies. So it was just like internal monologues that I would have in myself. I was like, I want to work on an international space. So I started like everybody else. I just started job hunting. And it was even before remote work became a thing. just pre-COVID. I started doing the hunt, doing a couple of interviews, getting that regrets email. But I've done a couple of interviews, so I see where I went wrong. And I think the grit that is within me really helped me, and that tenacity really helped me keep pushing. And it's something that I've always had since I was a child. Like, you tell me I can't do something, I'll prove to you that I can. So that essentially really pushed me until I applied to Tutuka at the time. Right now it's paymentology, but I applied to Tutuka on another role. But then the recruiter kept my resume, and she decided to reach out to me on LinkedIn and was like, I really like your resume. You didn't get that particular role, but if we open up something else, would you be interested? And I was like, bet. And that is how I now landed into the tech space. Started as an account manager. That's how I started before I scaled into more leadership roles. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's pretty interesting. There are a couple of things you've mentioned, especially around grief. You mentioned that you lost your mom. Sorry about that,
Mhm.
and that led to your pivot. How old were you at the
Mhm.
time, and like how did you process that, and how did it actually impact you actually pivoting to moving away from architecture, I believe, into the
Mhm.
corporate
Mhm. Yeah.
accounting and event space? Yeah.
So I was 24 at the time,
Okay.
and 24 turning 25. I was 24 at the time, and I needed a way, because the thing is, the markets are hard. Architecture, by the time you peak in your career, you are in your late 40s, early 50s by the time you're peaking. And I'm like, I need to work and I need to start building something for myself. Like, my parents did not leave me with like a huge inheritance and a trust fund, so I don't have the luxury for that. So I needed to work and I needed to get my hands in it, and it's something that I'm really glad that's how I was raised. I know how to get into it. For the grief part of things, I am the type of person who can delay it at sometimes, because I'm
Mm,
thinking I need to do stuff. I need to finish and I need to do stuff. I now know that it's better that you process it as well. So I learned at that time, like in my late now 20s, how to process it. But I'm the youngest in the family, but I needed to like figure out, okay, so now what else am I gonna do? How else are we gonna do this? How are we gonna grow? And I was like looking at architecture and then looking at, can I get into business? And
mm.
it was like business seemed like the worthwhile decision at that time. And I took a jump. I took a leap of faith, not knowing where I would land. But hey, here I am today.
Cool. Thanks for
Mhm.
sharing that context in your background, Grace. You're currently the regional commercial director at OnafriQ. What does a regional commercial director do? And can you also help demystify what commercial trading is for our listeners who might not be familiar with your space?
Okay, so let me start with my day to day. My day to day is leadership. So it's managing teams, it's looking after. So currently, I oversee the card product across South and Eastern Africa, and I also look after Kenya as a market across all business verticals. So I have certain people who report to me, and then I oversee other people's deals. So it looks like on a day to day, that admin work, that leadership part, where I sit down with you and I'm like, okay, so where are we with this? What help do you need? There's that first part, and then now there's my day to day, which is a lot of strategic work. So if it's a partner that we're working with, or a partner that we're considering, or a business market that we are considering expanding into, I would scope it out from the numbers itself. And because I'm very much data driven, so I would look at the numbers, I look at the business case before I even present it to the executive leadership and be like, this is something that I think we could do. I look at the numbers, I look at the pipeline of who would use this particular thing. I look at the day to day of how we can manage it. Is the risk worthwhile? Are the costs something that I could reduce, or are the costs going to be ever growing as this thing grows? So there is that strategic work that I look into. And then there's a lot of account management. So because I oversee Kenya as a market, there are specific accounts that are under my ownership. It means contacting those particular clients, having meetings with them. I have had a number of dinners, lunches, uh, breakfast. I will have that with you. I will sit down in a meeting. I will scope out if there are marketing initiatives we could collaborate. How could we collaborate? And then to add to that, there are also budgets that now I review because there's specific KPI. So on a regional side of things, the entire region, including the people who are managing those particular things, their KPI becomes my KPI. So it looks at how are we achieving this? Where are we on track? H2 is almost up. What are we doing about that? How are we looking to grow? What are the next things coming into market? So it's a lot of oversight and leadership and people management and also thinking now, forecasting and thinking in terms of future. So that is my day to day. In terms of commercial work is not just numbers. It's people. So it's the contracting side of things. It's the relationship side of things. When I was at Paymentology, actually the person who hired me, there are two people. So Miranda Perimal and Prelian Perimal, Miranda is now the co-founder of Scale, which is a fintech infrastructure that helps people set up their card programs. Miranda taught me something that has stuck with me since then. It is people work with people. So there is that relationship building that you go through on a day to day. In order for you to have any commercial deals with people, they need to like you, or you need to have something that you can exchange with them. So it's looking at things with a fine tooth comb and also getting out of it. So you get into it, into the details, and then you get out of it to look at it at a strategic or like a bird's eye view, or in terms of holistically, what could this thing particularly become? And then there is a lot of number work. So you need to know your stuff. You just can't come into a meeting and tell people that we need to think out of the box. What does out of the box look like? What are the numbers? How do you build your arguments around this? It also trains you to look at, if at all you are going to ever pitch to investors, you need to know what it is that they're looking at. You need to know your numbers. You need to know your customer. You need to know whatever base it is that you have. You need to map out that entire scope. So it's complex and simple at the same time, I would say. But the first base layer of it is people.
Yeah, I was about to mention the same. As you were speaking, I got the understanding that it's a very people heavy role, and you have to leverage and build a lot of relationships. How big is your current team? How many people report to you currently?
So for the Kenyan market, it's one person. And then for the cards side of things, how many are we? I think we're like 12. I think they're 12. Yeah. Last I checked, we're about 10, no, 10 people. So on the card side of things, it's about 10. In Kenya, it's one person. So that one person also covers the 10. Yeah.
Ah, okay. And besides Kenya, which other countries is your team distributed in?
Oh, Tanzania, DRC, Ethiopia, Uganda, and also people. Yeah, that's the main coverage. And then now we spread it. A ton of the team is in Kenya, but in Rwanda as well. So that's the coverage, but that covers South and Eastern Africa. So that also looks at Zimbabwe and Zambia and Botswana and the SADC region, South Africa. It looks at that as well. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Thanks. I know we'll get into a conversation about leadership and your leadership philosophy later. But before we get to that, what is the moment or the achievement you're most proud of in your career so far?
Working with Visa and M-Pesa to launch the Global Pay card. When I got into that project, I used to sit in meetings with Visa and be like, what the hell did I tell these people? Why did they believe me? Why am I here? And there was a ton of intimidation because, like I told you, I started out as an account manager before now growing also in Paymentology to become the business regional lead for East Africa. And I would sit there and just like, what am I telling these people? But I was thrown into the fire. Like I needed to learn because you need to understand that I had no payments background. Actually, majority of the people who I have interacted with who work in payments barely have like a payments background per se. They have done other things. They've done maybe international relationships, and then now it comes into this. And launching that card program, that was amazing because we worked on that card program. It was ready in like 2020, but CBK and the things, it took a while before we got that approval to launch it in market. And just launching that was revolutionary, and seeing how many right now you see MTNs doing this, doing the virtual card as well, and people are tapping into this space. And you're trying to make, not really trying, we are building out how can we make cards work for the sub-Saharan market. And I think for me, that is one of the key highlights in my career. And that is one thing that I will forever be very proud of, for working with the teams at Paymentology, at Safaricom, and at Visa also, to just implement that particular product. Because it, on our side of payment, when I was at Paymentology, that was now, because I was the main account person for that particular project, it was really amazing just launching that particular card. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's good to hear. What exactly was the role you played in the M-Pesa? I believe this is the M-Pesa virtual card, yeah, with Visa?
Yes, yes,
Ah, okay.
yes,
What was
yes.
the role that you played? Because I know this was must have been back in 2021, if I'm not wrong, right? That's when you guys.
2022.
Oh, that's
2022 is when it went live. Is it
okay,
22?
okay.
Yeah, 22 is when it went live. So
Okay.
my key role, I took the capacity of project manager or account manager, if you call it, specifically for Safaricom. So because I started at Paymentology and I was an account manager, Safaricom was one of my accounts at the time. And then when I got promoted into business regional lead, I retained that account because I understood majority of the projects. I worked with them on the tinkering on what it is that they needed to build. We did a lot of edits to it. And my side of things, I was the main project manager from the Paymentology side. And if you have read on Paymentology, it is card solutions, so prepaid virtual companion cards. So because I understood the APIs on our side, I would work with now the Visa project manager as well on that end, and a Safaricom project manager, to just ensure that all work streams are implemented well, all contracts are signed, all invoices are closed. So that was my role. I took on the project lead from the Paymentology side.
All right, fantastic. I know when you came onto this project, you mentioned that you didn't have payments experience.
No.
What are some of the things you did to bridge that gap and just make sure that for this opportunity you got, you were able to get up to speed pretty quickly and be able to deliver your best work?
So I had a lot of transferable skills. I could manage accounts. I could really manage accounts well. I could lead a project. I knew how to scope out a project. What are the timelines? What needs to be done? That part, I had it. I had the people skills as well. I have been told that I can be quite charismatic, so that worked also to my advantage. So I used my soft skills and I transferred that into my role at the time. So, and then I'm very good at working under pressure. And it was the payments environment. So it's going to be high pressure. It's going to be fast moving. Everything is moving quickly. The other thing that I did is that I spend time with different people across all teams. So if it's developers, I spend time with developers. If it's reading on the API and even reading on just the structure of what it is that I need to collect, I read through Paymentology's website. Any documentation that I was given, I read through it. I understood it. I even learned how the the engine itself that builds this works. So I got to understand how the backend pull a report from Visa, understand what this means. And I spent months, like the first 6 months, I spent that reading. So I worked hand in hand at that time with my colleagues. But after 6 months, it was mine. It was for me to lead it. So I needed to learn quickly. And if it looked at learning how Visa systems also work, what are the projects that they have? What are the products that they have? How does this bin differ from this particular bin? I did a ton of reading. So I needed to also put in the work. I know that most people will join a company and then you'll expect that, okay, I'll be done for onboarding and I'll do one, two, three, four things and it's going to be hunky dory after that. No, there is work that you have to put into it. If you want to actually grow and you want to get this particular things, you need to be very aggressive and assertive in how you do it. You need to make friends with the developers. Because I know that people say that developers are not the friendliest, but I made friends with the developers and I made friends with the technical project team lead, so that if I needed something to be implemented, I have gone and schmoozed somebody, I've talked to somebody, I've told them why we need this. I learned how to even manage leadership. leadership. So I did an up and down kind of management. If I needed to manage leadership to ensure that this needs to go through, and because I'm also very data driven and numbers oriented, that helped me out. So a lot of transferable skills and a lot of grit helped me out. And I got to learn. By the time I was leaving paymentology, I knew the card system very well. I knew the card space very well because I left paymentology like 3 years, 3 or so years later. But I got to understand the card space extremely well. I worked with other fintechs. I worked with other MNOs. I worked with other banks. I learned how to do structured deals for bin sponsorship with different banks, know how to position, understand what are the issues with the market and how can we implement it better. By the time I was leaving, I was at an expert level because of the time that I spent learning and digging into things, even things that don't concern me. Because the technical side, I know people will say, I'm in business development, that doesn't concern me. No, I needed to know it holistically so that when I'm speaking to someone, I also understand what it is that they're doing.
Fantastic. From what you've just shared, one of the things I'm getting is, as a leader, you need to have a great sense of self-awareness. You sound like someone who's very self-aware. You know what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and you using your transferable skills as a foundation to build upon, and then applying that grit and that growth mindset to be able to grow is something great and inspiring from your journey. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Grace, I did a bit of digging online, and it seems
Yeah.
like you had a bit of a modeling stint. Can you share more
I
about it?
mean, yeah, I was just being a supportive friend, honestly. I have great bone structure and I can take a photo. I can pose for photos. Like if you tell me to pose like this and you tell me to do this and I have beautiful skin, I was just being a supportive friend. I supported friends who are photographers. And so a lot of these people whom I did this thing for, when I was immediately after high school, I was at a church called Sit Valley Road, and we had this ex-cons thing, and there were a ton of people. So the people who were practicing photography, the people who were practicing makeup. Actually, that's where I met you, and there was all these things happening. So I was supportive. You want
Wait, wait,
somebody
wait,
to
wait,
model?
wait,
It'll be
wait.
me, Tika, me.
You just said makeup and me. Let's just make it clear. I wasn't doing makeup at the time, just for our listeners. But anyway, go on.
So I was being a very supportive friend. You need a photographer. You need people to pose for you. I will go pose for you. Like as long as it's not something that is questionable, that if people find those photos at some point, I will do it for you. If you need a face to put makeup on, I will do that for you. If you need people to be dancers in your video, in your music video, I will somewhat support or I'll be like a cheerleader for the other people. And because I had a lot of free time in my hands during, okay, kind of, because architecture was torturous. We actually used to call it architecture. Um, I would go through that and I needed a place to just go and chill and become a young person that I am. So I took photos for people. I did people took did makeup on my face and then took a bunch of photos so that they can build their portfolio. So I was just really being a supportive friend. Honestly, I was never paid for any of that. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Architecture, that's what you said.
Torture. Yeah.
Architecture,
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty hilarious. Cool. All right, let's shift gears a bit and get into fintech innovation and emerging markets.
Mm.
What are some of the things or some of the most promising shifts you've seen in Africa's fintech landscape over the past 5 years?
Um, One, I'm seeing a lot of human driven design. So a ton of the products that sit in the Western world, and you will, one thing that I could pick easily is like a buy now, pay later model. In South Africa, maybe it may work, but across sub Saharan Africa, you need to be very careful. Um, there is, obviously, Klarna is going through their things right now, but there's a buy now, pay later existing model in the Western world. It works very well. People are trained on credit, people understand credit cards, they know how to increase their credit, they understand the need for it. But taking such a model and just trying to copy paste it in the African landscape isn't really going to work. So a lot of the trends that I'm seeing now shifting is human driven design. How can you take what is existing with mobile money and embed those APIs within your infrastructure to implement it further? So let's say there was a time that Nala was doing this thing where they integrated into APIs for M-Pesa, specifically for specific merchants to pay directly. So instead of you sending money to your cousin here who needed to pay school fees, you could pay for it directly using their app. So through such things, I'm seeing a lot of human driven design, especially human being and African driven design. Because our landscape can't fit like one blanket approach, you have to create sort of a nuanced approach. How does Kenya work in comparison to a Nigeria, which is bank heavy, and Kenya's mobile money heavy? And then a place like South Africa is more of cards or tokenization and all these tap to pay kind of things. So how do you build features that suit that particular market? It's one thing that I'm really excited to see in terms of the shift that the market is taking. Even people who are coming up with fintechs, you're thinking about that. How am I implementing this? The other thing that is really key is governments in Africa. I know they can be a pain, but they are slowly embracing, and this I say it lightly, they're slowly embracing blockchain or the crypto side of things or stable coins, because we're seeing governments starting to write papers about CBDCs, that's central bank digital currencies, and we're seeing that shift. I know that most central banks' issue is they want to control it, and they don't understand that decentralized finance is not controlled by the government, but they can control it maybe at a point of exchange. So where I am moving a stable coin like USDC or KSC, if I have that, to fiat currency, so KES or USD. At that point is where the governments could come in. But also the growth of CBDCs will see the more increase of cashless economies. I don't think we'll ever really do away with cash, but I think we could balance it out, because in some markets like Uganda, it's mainly cash heavy. So how can we expand that? The other thing that I'm really excited to see is a way to close that loop. So mobile money did it well, and I really love how M-Pesa did it. When M-Pesa started, it was just P2P, because people would put money within an envelope and send it to their parents' up country. But right now, what is happening is that loop is closing. That loop is closing in terms of they're adding merchants to it, or they've added merchants to it. Right now, I think they have like 500,000 merchants in their platform, and it works in the same way that a card scheme could work. They have the merchants, they have the banks that issue cards. So the money stays within the ecosystem. And the one thing that is also really cool about that, and the EAC regulators are even working on it right now, is how do we connect now all these markets, which now brings in one of the key things that made me fall in love with OnafriQ was, can we make borders matter less? Can we remove the lines that were drawn during colonialism and kind of create fluidity, creating access, creating that instant issuance or instant movement of money? And that is something that is really, really growing. And this is being embedded in multiple finance channels where people can connect PesaLink, their bank account, to their card, to their mobile money wallet. And it's creating a seamless thing such that all you need to travel with is a phone. Like your phone becomes your wallet. It becomes everything to you. And if at all you're robbed or something like that, you can easily just call these particular entities and freeze your account. So those are some of the shifts that I'm seeing in the market. But the first thing is mainly a lot of human driven design, because it's not wise to take a product and try and fit it into the market. You need to look at the market and see what is missing or what could add benefit to the market, and then build your product around that.
Awesome. You shared some great nuggets there around human driven design, but also something you mentioned that piqued my attention. And it's something I also experience in my day to day work, is especially in the fintech space, and just how quickly and how dynamic our space is. You find that regulation will always trail innovation or the technology. So it's normally governments playing catch up, or people in our space trying to educate governments on the importance of it and how to regulate it in a way that it's not punitive to people in business, or even to the customers who want to use the products that we build. So yeah, as you're just sharing, that came to mind.
Yeah.
when you were just sharing like some of the promising shifts that you've seen over the past 5 years.
So regulators, they will always be slow until such a point where you actually have people who care about growing the economies. Actually, you look at the big picture, because you have to look at the economy and where do you want it to grow and what is the ripple effect of this economy growing. It means that people will be stable, there would be more jobs, there would be all these things. So regulation is slowly coming up, and I think it's a control thing and a lack of understanding. If you do not understand what you are setting regulations for, then you will block a number of things. Like Ethiopia in itself is slowly opening up. Their regulators are slowly learning how different payments nuggets work. They're learning where someone like a Visa or a MasterCard comes in. And all that needs to be like these associations that exist, this fintech association for this country, South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, all these associations are the base ground. They like almost act like the middleman between the industry and the regulator. So those particular associations need to have people who understand where the industry is shifting. What are the needs of the market? Like right now, to get a PSP license, it'll take you 2 to 4 years, give or take, in Kenya. And that is a pain because that kills innovation, meaning you really can't do much. However, even with how slow our regulators will move, because that is a mountain that we will need to move, it'll move at some point, but it'll take time. I would say that the next things that as people in the industry we need to be looking at is partnerships and collaborations where they are allowed. So there are instances where you could leverage off of somebody's license. It could be a bank that you leverage off of their license. It could be a certain partner that you have, or it could be an acquisition. But we have to be careful with acquisitions. Not all licenses are transferable. So looking at the different acquisitions that as a company or as a business you want to make, it could be looking at that because regulations are going to take time, but business still has to go on. People who have investors, your investors still need to see your bottom line. They need to see the growth. They need to get a return on their investment. So also, I know that we have a very restricted environment for some markets, or each market has its different kind of restriction. But the first thing that I would look at is partnership and collaboration, because if you do not adhere to compliance requirements, that means being shut down, that means being fined. And those are battle hills that you really don't have to go through. I know that most fintechs are usually like, let me do what I need to do. If they catch me, I'll stop and then I'll pay the fine or something like that. But you don't want to be shut down from multiple markets. And once you're blacklisted in one market, especially in the East African community, it'll be replicated in another market. Another market is not going to trust you, or they will harass you until you meet certain criteria. So if you don't have a license, for example, in a particular market, you could partner with a licensed entity. Most of the time, here's where banks will come in because your store of funds or your value or whatever it is will be sitting at a bank. So how can you partner with the existing banks? How can you trade with the banks if at all you're doing remittances? How can you hold your pool of funds with a bank because they are the licensed entity? So what you're mainly going for maybe is a letter of no objection, which could take 6 months to a year. That is shorter than waiting for a license, which could take 2 to 4 years. But until also the associations that exist in each market can step in and also support in a lot of education and training and understanding moving policies that actually make sense for the particular industry, then that would be helpful, in my take.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree with everything you've shared. And especially when it comes to the gap in knowledge from legislators, there's some guys who are doing a really amazing job. I believe they're called the Virtual Assets Chamber of Commerce. I
Yes.
think it's
Yeah.
SKKI.
Those
Shout
are
out. Yeah.
fantastic.
Shout out to them.
Yeah.
I've been seeing a few things happening over the past couple of months and just how they've been engaging the legislators over time, trying to address some of the punitive articles like in the finance bill and even in the virtual assets bill itself to make sure that yes, there's the compliance obligations that are needed, and you mentioned in any jurisdiction on this planet that companies, businesses need to adhere to, but also there needs to be that quid pro quo, right? Like give and take. You can't punitively
Yeah.
tax companies to the point where they can't operate or even be profitable
Yes.
just because you want to collect taxes. So I agree with you
Yeah.
100%. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Kakai and his team. They're doing a fantastic job. Yeah.
Fantastic. We're waiting for that bill to actually be signed.
Yeah.
And because we have clients also who are on our neck who want to implement this, but I'm like, I can't touch it yet
Yeah.
because I don't want to be fined. So once that bill is signed, I think it'll really have a ripple effect. And also another thing that needs to shift, even in the card space and its conversations we've been having with the schemes, is working with the banks, because the banks right now are limited also to fiat-based bins. They don't know how to do stablecoin-based bins. So also shifting that narrative with the banks. I know the banks are rigid, but anyone in the Bankers Association of Kenya, if they're listening, it's something to also start looking into. I know
Yeah.
that the schemes in the SAMIA zones are working on those particular papers, but it's something that also needs to happen. So it's one thing to happen with the government, it's another thing to now happen with the industries. And unfortunately, the people who have been the dons for the industry for the longest time are the banks. So banks are really not going to go anywhere because people will hold their funds somewhere unless now you move to hold your funds in a ledger on a crypto based platform. However, that is not going to happen overnight. So
Yeah.
even the current banking frameworks that are there need to be adjusted to fit all those bills that will come into play. Yeah.
Cool. I know you spoke about fines and how you're really waiting for this bill to be passed and for it to
Yeah.
become law. The next question I have for you is at OnafriQ, how are you navigating the complexity of scaling commercial operations across different African markets with different regulatory and user environments?
So I'll speak on what I can because I can't speak on all things.
I know, I know.
There are places where we do have the licenses are already mapped, so that could have come in through application or come in through acquisition. So we've done a number of acquisition over the past couple of years because we were looking at like a holistic kind of payments channel network that does the remittances, it does the cards, it does the merchant collections, all of that. So there are markets where we have existing licenses. The other part that we do also leverage is the different relationships with the banks specifically or different financial players. That has really, really helped us in order to scale. So where we have existing partnerships or collaborations, we go for a letter of no objection in that particular market, and we are able to launch and we are able to work in that particular market. So that is really what has really helped us. I think that's as much as I can cover it so that legal is not on my neck. But yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand. And thanks for being as honest and sharing what you can at the moment. I know some are definitely trade secrets, others are,
Yeah.
yeah, you can't just talk about it right now. Cool. That being said, with your experience across remittance, AI, SaaS, blockchain, which of the technologies do you think will have the biggest impact on the future of financial inclusion in Africa?
Blockchain,
Okay.
stable coins, breaks the borders. It allows for seamless movement of money. Um, I know it'll be a fight. It won't really be a fight with the banks. It'll be a fight with the MNOs. That's where the fight will actually be. And that is where they could try and shut down people because MNOs hold like the largest base. And they started this whole financial inclusion thing because it was hard to set up bank accounts. And now you could have your mobile money, you could pay your merchant, you could have this la di da kind of flow of everything. But with blockchain, what that does is that it opens it up. So, meaning if I have a KES stablecoin account, I could easily convert my money to maybe UGX. But then now also that comes into play with the banks or whoever it is who's controlling that FX, the licenses that are required there. Where are you getting that particular FX trade to manage that FX trade? Because everyone's problem with the cross border side of things is who controls the FX. So I think if MNOs and the different fintechs or both come into play and manage it well, blockchain will be revolutionary, especially across Africa. I've seen a couple of fintechs come up and look at ways to move money seamlessly across borders. So it could be euros, it could be USD, it could be KS, it could be UGX, it could be ZAR, it could be uh, anything, the naira, it could be all of that that you're moving about. And the seamless way to move all of that, it has to be a marriage between the fiat world and the stablecoin world in order to allow that seamless instance. It almost looks like sending a text. As instantly as I take my phone, and even if, especially WhatsApp or how iMessage works, and I have someone's number in the US, I can easily just write the text and press send, and they'll receive it. That's how money movement should be. But for that easy, seamless movement of money like that or payments or paying of salaries, gig workers are growing within our market. So moving that money seamlessly without Swift or RTGS or whichever other channel that you want to use, that seamless move of money that is in an open loop environment, in my thinking, will require sort of a marriage between the stablecoin world and the fiat world. And it'll need all entities to play nice with one another because there's room for all of us within the market. So that is one of the things which I think will be really revolutionary in terms of financial inclusion in Africa.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I've had other guests on the pod, and they they share the same sentiments you've shared, especially around. I know there's the complexity of blockchain, and if you think about maybe 5, 10 years ago, how difficult it was to manage your wallets or even, let's say, purchase some digital assets compared to now, where
Mhm.
uh, companies like yourself and others are actually abstracting that complexity and building a very nice UI or UX on top of like that complexity that happens with the blockchain. Because if you think about
Mhm.
it, customers just want to be able to move money, save, and do business, make purchases as easily as possible.
Mhm.
So if you remove
Mhm.
the complexity of managing your own keys or
Yeah.
yeah, just the complexity that comes with cryptography. That's how we're going to
Mhm.
win. And I like what you mentioned about the merging of like what we'd call traditional finance and the crypto world. And it's getting
Mhm.
to the point where yes, both of them will have to play nice, and it'll be a net win for everyone. I
Mhm.
was seeing someone who mentioned. I'm trying to remember who it was. I forget who mentioned it on X the other day, and he was saying that
Mhm.
companies that don't embrace a stable coin or a crypto strategy will become like the Kodaks or
Yeah.
which are these other companies like a Nokia.
Blockbuster.
Yeah, Blockbuster.
Blockbuster.
Exactly. You'll be
Yeah.
left behind by just the
Yeah.
rapid change that's currently happening. So I do agree. Like
Yeah.
both will have to play nice, and it'll be a net
Mhm.
net win for everyone.
True.
Yeah, yeah. That being said, there's another question I have for you around how deeply involved you are in scaling companies and guiding product diversification. How do you identify
Mhm.
the right product market fit in new territories? Because as in your role, I believe one of the
Mhm.
things when you're thinking about strategy and moving into new markets is actually identifying product market fit. And if we go back to what you mentioned about the human, you mentioned the human design, right?
Human driven design. Yeah.
Human driven design, correct. How do you identify the right product market fit in new territories?
The first question I like to ask is, what problem is this solving? It may not be a problem that is known to people, or it's not that big of a thing, but it could be that as you're bringing in the solution, you are solving a problem. So to look at product market fit, you look at first the customer. You need to understand the customer. And the customer could have several archetypes. It could be a suburban wife, it could be a university student, it could be grandmother who's tech savvy, it could be all kinds of things. So looking at that product market fit is looking at What problem am I solving? That's like the first layer of it. If I map out the problem, then I'm looking at, okay, so this is the problem, this is the issue that it's solving, this is the complexity around it, and this is the resolve that I'm bringing in terms of this product. The second thing that I will look at now here taps into the compliance bit is what's the complexity of getting into that market? Is it a market where I have to be integrated into one player? And is my return on investment going to be worthwhile? Or am I going to make a few $1,000s? That doesn't make any sense. But if I'm able to generate higher revenue, that even becomes better. The third thing that I look at is what are my operational costs? So can I reduce my operational costs to a way that it won't really affect me that much? Or will I have this monthly recurring fee of it could be that I have launched or have not launched it, but I have this monthly recurring fee, and these fees come in the form of bank fees. It comes in the form of maintenance of a platform. It could be that you've licensed the platform from somebody else and you want to embed it within your own tech stack. How much is that costing me? And if I look at the operational cost vis-a-vis the return on investment that I could get, is it worthwhile at the end of it? And then the fourth thing that I would look at is if all this doesn't even work, if this product is not adopted well, if the partner doesn't take on it very well, or if there's not high use of it, what's my exit strategy out of it? Like, how do I want to get out of this particular deal? If I look at all those things holistically, then I'm able to look like, okay, so I can get into this market. You can't be a person who, like, if you do strategy, you can't be a person who runs away from risk. You will always have risk, but there has to be a palatable kind of risk that you're willing to take. And the returns have to be something that makes sense. It's almost like buying stocks. The market could crash. Like right now, with what is happening in the US and China beef, we've seen the market plummet at times, and certain stocks which are going up, we just go down instantly. So working that entire framework out, looking at the problems that I'm solving, what's the complexity of getting into this market, what are the operational costs that I have to incur, and then looking at my exit strategy. With the first one, which looking at the project market fit, it also tells me if the customer will be actually looking to adopt this kind of thing. Because sometimes we come up with all these things because somebody has said that AI is a buzzword. AI has its place on how it can be used. It could be that you run a support, you run a telco or something, or you run this kind of business and you want to manage your staff. You do not want to, as you're growing, your customer needs are growing. Can I have sort of AI intelligent kind of bots that can almost communicate to a customer in such a way? It's not just a chatbot that gives you a response, but it's something that can be able to pick what the issue is and then now redirect it to maybe a technical person. It's a way to look at how can I manage my particular cost. So it's not moving with the global trends and being like, this is the buzzword that is going. Everyone is saying everything's going to be AI driven. It's where does AI fit in all of this that I'm doing? AI as an example in this case. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for that. You mentioned something about complexity of entering certain markets. I just wanted to find out from you, what's been the most difficult market or country to get into, and what made it difficult?
So not really most difficult to get into.
Mm.
It's just the complexity of it. Egypt. Egypt as a market is dominated by Fori. So if you are a payments player, you have to be integrated to Fori. And you have to look at what time am I going to allocate my resources to do? How long is this integration going to take? How long is the approval process going to take? Understanding all of that before you even make a decision. And then, do I actually have existing customers there
Yeah.
who will make sense of all these costs that I'm going to cover at the end of the day? So it's an example of the complexity. Nigeria is another market. So Nigeria and South Africa. Nigeria and South Africa have this on soil requirement if you're going to issue cards. So your servers need to be on soil. For you to get certain licenses for domestic kind of transactions, you need your servers on soil. For you, before you even get the international, because money can't, for South Africans, if you issue a card to a South African, the processing can't happen, let's say in Germany, and then it'll be routed back in South Africa. They need your soil, they need your servers on soil. So that kind of resource allocation requires you to build. Right now, a lot of people are building cloud native solutions These ones require you to have your servers, like actually traditional servers on soil. It could be that some of these things are going to change or have slightly changed, but looking at that also, it's a complexity. It's not just the regulatory side of things, it's what are the requirements of me to operate in this particular market. Ghana is also slowly becoming sort of like Nigeria. Every single day, BOG wakes up and has a new law. So you have to also see, am I adhering to this, and what is the complexity? How many customers do I have in this particular market, and how can I scale properly across the board? Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. For there's something I'm not, maybe I didn't capture it correctly. In Egypt, you said foray.
Fawry,
Foray.
Fawry.
What's that?
So, it's an organization. It's like the monopoly of the market. So it's like the main payments player within the market itself. So let's say you
Mhm.
want to issue cards, you have to be integrated to Fawry because it's like a switch. All transactions will have to be routed through that particular channel. If let's say you want to do remittance, all transactions have to be routed through Fawry. So you have to really consider, I'm getting into this market. What is the complexity of me getting into this market? Now, that one is like a traditional switch, sort of what Tanzania right now has. Uganda has InterSwitch. The FSSA markets also have the GMAX kind of switch. So understanding that integration and what is my return, because some of these markets require you to pass through a switch. CIMO in Mozambique is another example. For instance, there are card programs for existing banks which were shut down in Mozambique until such a point when they could route all domestic transactions via the government approved local switch. So those are just some of the complexities that you need to think through as you are considering, this is a market that I want to expand into. Why do I want to expand into it? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the context there. That's definitely cleared it up for me. I'd like us to now shift a bit and now speak about partnerships and leadership. I know
Okay.
you've led global partnerships across multiple sectors. What makes a partnership truly transformative and not just transactional?
I would say, in my experience, it would be looking at not really how can I win from you, or how much money can I make from you. Obviously, money is the main conversation that led to this partnership even forming, but it's caring about that customer in terms of, when you partner with somebody, you go sign a contract, you say, I'm going to give you the services, these are the fees I'm going to charge you, this is how much this is how much, these are your projections, this is how your P&L is supposed to look like, da da da. Most of the time in year one, or the first 6 to 12 months, those numbers are not going to fully hit what it is that you projected. But me as an expert who went and signed this contract, or me as an expert who went and got this particular partnership, I have certain access to specific data that I understand because I have been doing this kind of business for a while. So a way for me that I see to take out the transactional level of it is looking at my client or my customers or my accounts particular reports. It could be on a quarterly basis. I don't really need to meet you on a weekly basis, but it could be quarterly, for example, and I'm looking at where your customers are spending, how are they spending, which is the key market to now send to. These are the stats that I'm getting in this particular market. It kind of moves it from transactional, where it's you pay me, I give you the service. Because this is not really Microsoft that you're getting the access to their tools. And even Microsoft, whenever they do an update, they give you, like Google, whenever Google does an update, it shows you what's new. Like, this is what you can add. It's in the same way that we, as people who do leadership or strategy or whatever it is, you sit down with your client, you sit down with your partner. Actually, at OnafriQ, we like to call you are my partner. I'm going to show you, okay, this is how you can grow. And then it could look like, if at all, and that's where negotiation comes through. If we are signing multiple markets, how can I reduce my fees for you? What can I waive? What can I add for you as an add-on feature? What can I show you to improve? If you start, can I be having weekly calls with you to just check on the tech side of things and constantly talking? Actually, this week I met with one of the accounts in Kenya, and they were glad that between October to today, we've just been constantly talking. And that constant talking, especially on tech related matters, it has improved their services tremendously, and systems are stable. Their people are not even complaining at all for some of the issues that maybe they would have had pending or something like of the sort, because now they're sure that me as their partner will care about them. Me as their partner wants to see them grow, because as my customer grows, I grow. When we were at Paymentology, we would go with this tagline that when you make money, I make money. So it's not just one entity that is winning out of all of this, it's all parties that are winning out of this. And that requires attention, that requires intentionality also as you work with your different partners.
All right, awesome. I'd like to ask you, Grace, what is your leadership philosophy and how do you structure your teams?
My leadership philosophy was taught to me. I mentioned my former boss a while back. Was taught to me by Miranda Paramal, and she said that people work with people. So that has really stuck with me. If people work with people, people need to actually like you, and it's not a manipulation kind of like. It's really not hard to be kind to people and patient with people and show them how they can grow. So working with people, navigating the different personalities. Not everybody is like happy go lucky in the morning. Some people don't like to have meetings before 10. Some people like to have meetings before 10. The other now thing that now works with me, especially when I come to managing different teams or just working with different people who at some point will report to me about a thing, is looking at how they like to be led. Like, I need to understand you as a person. What are you looking for? What are your key things that you want to grow into? And then how can I support you? And then also allowing for that model of managing up. I know that when we were growing up, and if you are Kenyan and you've gone through the 844 system, you can't question the teacher. You can't tell the teacher that they're wrong. You can't tell, and that's something that I
Yeah.
unlearned. Like, I had to unlearn it. This passive behavior of Kenyans, I had to like do away, like separate, have a divorce with it, because you have to get to a place where you are assertive. You say what it is that needs to be said, obviously with respect in play, but you need to say what needs to be done and be very assertive and very direct as to how you're doing it. So that for me has really helped, and allowing for that. Recognize another thing that has really helped me is humility. And it's not this fake humility of people who say ni God maze in Kenya. It is looking at, I'm not the smartest person in this room. There is somebody who knows this thing better than me, and am I willing to allow myself to be taught? That has helped me. That teachability is something that I have stuck with all my life till today. Can I be taught? If you can't be taught, then you can't grow. And that's just the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Teachability and humility. Yeah, I like everything you've actually shared. When I was preparing for our podcast, I was just going through your LinkedIn, and there's a comment you made, I think, on one of your posts. And you
Mm,
mentioned that my commitment is to be a positive female influence and frequently advocate on behalf of other women and help them succeed.
mm,
I know you were a mentor at Akira Chicks, and I'd like us to just speak about mentorship in general. And I know Akira Chicks
mhm,
is a program that uplifts ladies in the tech space.
yeah,
Um,
mhm.
can you just share with us how that experience was for you and how long you were a mentor to Akira Chicks?
So my journey with the Kirschstick started back when I was at Paymentology. I think it was in 2022. And it started because we were looking at what can we give back. We had like a CSR program, and we were like, can I give back to some people, whether it's funds and time as well. And I started digging through and just speaking to a few people in my network, because I knew a couple of people who are mentors at Akira Chicks. And the whole concept around it really intrigued me, because the founders have this thing of they want to reach this number of girls. And these are girls who maybe society has dismissed you. Society has said you got pregnant. I have nothing to do with you. You were 18, you got pregnant, you will never succeed in this life. Just failure. Failure is all that they're saying. And this became an opportunity to step in, and not even on a technical side, because I am a non-tech woman, if I can put it like that. I don't get into the coding side of things, but I understand the business side of it. How do I position this product? Because it's one thing to build a solution, like I said earlier, it's another thing for it to fit in the market. And just sitting down with the CEOs and the founders of Akira Chicks and part of the team that does the training, getting certain girls also to mentor, because I mentored at Akira Chicks as a business mentor at Akira Chicks for about 3 years or so. So into paymentology, into IDT as well. I was a business mentor with Akira Chicks, and sitting down with some of these girls, understanding the complexity, showing them also how to navigate teams, because some of them would be put as leaders of their team. So you're usually put in units and you're supposed to build this thing, and then you're going to do a whole presentation in November or so. So managing those teams, because nobody's an island. I know that we like to push around the word self-made, but my opinion is that I don't really think that somebody's fully self-made.
Yeah.
You will work with people along the way and they will help you along the way. So it can't be that I'm in a team and I'm the only one shining. So teaching them also how to navigate those complexities of the conversations of their teams, how to show their team member doesn't want to work. How do I get this person to see that this is a win-win for both of us? And then also speaking with them about their product and asking them the thing, what problem are you solving, and comparing it to something that is already in the market, which is cheap. And I ask them the critic, so it also helps a lot of critical thinking, like why would I pick yours over that? So that in itself gets them to break, and that's one thing that the founders wanted to do, break them out of this kind of development mindset or only development mindset, and look at the business side of things, know how to navigate the corporate landscape when it comes to the tech world, and positioning that for them. And for me, it was really insightful to just give back and give my time, because what I was giving really is my time. I would intentionally spend time with some of these ladies. I would go for the graduations. I would sometimes sit as part of the panel that gets to go through this particular projects that the ladies have been working on throughout the year, and help them also just break it down and see, okay, this is how I want you to think. I would work with them also when they're prepping for their interviews, because they would meet all these particular tech companies and they would need to go through interviews. How do I speak through an interview? You can BS yourself slightly, but you need to know your stuff. So understanding how you build that out was really helpful for the girls, and also for me, getting to learn how to, that has also been part of the learning curve of how to lead people, because not everyone will be at the same level in your team. So how do you navigate that complexity across the board? And that is part of how can I give? How can I show, especially other African women, that you can step into this space and you can actually succeed at it? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you so much for your service in terms of giving back and uplifting other ladies as well. Akira Chicks has a special place in my heart, not because I was a mentor there, but my wife was actually a trainer
Nice.
there. She's and the thing I love about Akira Chicks is what you mentioned, right? Like, just it's not just about development and you being a developer. Like, they want to build uh, a holistic leader. Let me put it that way, because by the time you've gone through that product, or rather the program at Akira Chicks, you should be able to lead. You should be a critical thinker. My wife was a trainer in UX, right? So are you able to have like what you said, like the human driven design, UX, and not just building from a point of you thinking, you know what the customer needs, because part of the assignment was to actually go and find customers and do that user research, which is fundamental to building a product that people will actually use and solve problems. So yeah, you mentioned the dinners. I was my wife's plus one last year. Yeah, those dinners are
Nice.
really, yeah, the dinner
Yeah.
for graduation. So yeah, thank you again. I
Amazing.
just want to
Yeah.
say thank you so much. I got to interact with some of them and just see the impact it has on these girls, and the opportunity and their trajectory is just inspiring. I wish like some of us had some of these programs growing up,
I feel like
when,
men need to
yeah,
do it. Men don't. They don't have that for each other. The boy child is just suffering because the girl child is out here, girl power, and
Yeah.
then you guys need to do the same for men. Yeah.
Okay. Challenge accepted. I'll go and find other like-minded men and see what
Like
we can
bros
do.
who code, like bros who code, those
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Cool.
I'll send
Cool.
you my invoice. Yeah,
Ah,
we're
yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah, definitely. All right. I have a few more questions and then we'll get to wrap it up. So, still on mentorship, what advice do you have to give young women and underrepresented individuals entering the tech and innovation ecosystem today?
In as much as it's intimidating, at times you may meet all these global companies and you're like, what do I even have to offer? Don't really doubt yourself. Like, don't doubt yourself. You know your stuff. As for by the time you are getting a seat at the table, you actually know yourself. So sit on that table like you actually earned it and like you actually deserve it, and share your perspective. Don't fully try to morph into other people's kind of model or kind of mold that you have. There's an element of learning from others, like picking what you need to learn, but at the end of the day, you need to also deliver what it is that you have within you. Like, you know something that is very different. You have interacted with different kind of organizations. So how do you step in for that? And don't, as much as it's intimidating at times, you will learn how to grow to a space where you don't really have to be intimidated. And then the other thing is, I would say, build your network, learn people. It's a very small industry. Like, the number of people who I know have moved from one bank to one aggregator to the card scheme to another organization, it's because of all these relationships that you have. So, in as much as it is possible with you, don't burn bridges. Like, build actual, authentic relationships that are not just transactional, such that if somebody thinks of you top of mind, they're like, this person, I know it was like a business deal. I know it was a partnership. I know they were earning from it, but they actually really helped me scale my product. So that even when you leave that organization and it's 5 years down the line and you remember that you have a phone number for somebody, you can easily just pick up your phone. And because you didn't burn any bridges or you didn't leave bad blood, you can actually still engage those particular people. So it's a very small industry, and you never know when you walk into a boardroom who you will meet. So I would say build your network as far as it's possible with you, maintain great relationships, and don't be scared of this particular platform. The thing that you will actually easily come to learn is that not everybody knows everything, and that is comforting in its weird way. Yeah.
Yeah, not everyone knows everything. Yeah. Speaking of that, and I just want us to segue into my next question about speaking engagements. And I think it just ties into the last thing you mentioned about building your networks. You're, you've been involved in a couple of speaking engagements, different conferences. What would you say is the value of this speaking and networking opportunities?
The speaking engagement side of things, you get to learn a lot of things. If you're in a panel, you get to interact with people whom you would most likely never interact with. You get to understand their point of view. You get to understand different industries, especially if you don't have visibility of the wide and vast ecosystem that Africa is, or maybe you're tapping into a global scale. You don't fully understand maybe how the European market works, how the American market works. And that really helps, especially in the learning side of things. Majority of the time, people sometimes will go and flex in this particular conference. That's my opinion of how they're a thought leader. But don't get distracted by that. You could easily learn from the people who are actually speaking and they're valuable. Find sessions that are valuable, specific to you. Don't just randomly engage in everything. The second part of it is that if your business is like a B2B kind of level, you could easily get clients in those particular conferences because you'll meet banks there, you'll meet aggregators there, you'll meet card schemes there. So if your business offers a service for something else, or you offer tech provision for something else, you are able to actually have this particular you can be able to join these events, you can become part of an expo, you can host like this happy hours that people particularly host, or host whatever section or dinner or something, and you can get to pick the particular industry leaders that you want in that particular room, and that gives you a chance also to talk about your product. It gives you a chance to talk about your business. On terms of speaking, it helps you also as you do presentations, because most people may be in sales, but how to navigate a crowd, how to speak to different people is not always the easiest. So when you get the opportunity, it helps you learn how to speak, how to articulate yourself well. This is more of a personal development side of things. But the learnings, the opportunity to sell, especially for B2B side of things, and just your own career growth, your own sort of building yourself as a brand, putting yourself out there within the market. We've seen how job markets shift constantly. So it's good to interact with more and more people in the industry, especially if you've decided that this is the industry that you want to be in.
Fantastic. Grace, the thing I've noticed about you is you're really good at storytelling. Your storytelling skills are really good. What would you say is the role, or rather, what role does storytelling play in leadership and influence?
Storytelling gets whoever you're speaking to into whatever story you're trying to sell. It's not just me positioning my brand and me wanting to win and me wanting to this. It captures like I put it in a framework. I look at a situation, I look at the complexity of this particular situation, what's wrong with the situation, and I give the result. So SCR is how my brain, it's a mental model that my brain uses whenever I am even engaging in a story. So I could meet a client and I would put live situations to it and give them an example. So it would be they don't understand a specific API, or it's too complex, especially when you're speaking to business folk. They don't understand the tech side of things. And if you don't know how to do tech, if you don't know how to break it down in manageable pieces, actually with storytelling, I look at it as speaking to a 6 year old, speaking to my nephew's 9. So speaking to my nephew and telling him what I do and him understanding it completely without the complexity or the big jargon use of words. So it's
Mm.
simple. It's simple for me. I look at it like, what is this situation? What is the complication? What is the result? Anytime I'm telling a story, I will break it down. I will put live instruments to it. So if I want to maybe upsell a particular customer with a specific product, I will give them a live example that this is a person who has gone to this place and this is what they need to do, but then they can't do it because of one, two, three, four things. However, if you add this particular feature that I'm giving you, now they'll be able to do one, two, three, four things. So it meets a bottom line that I want to land to, while also showing the person who I'm speaking to that I understand their business at the end of the day.
Fantastic. Um, I'd just like to get some final thoughts from you. What's something about Africa's digital transformation story that you feel doesn't get enough attention?
It's it's how as Africans it gets attention, but I don't think it gets that much attention. Especially where investors are usually concerned. They don't understand how as a market we are either mobile money dominant or we are bank dominant and all these things. They understand mobile money only on the P2P side of things, but they don't see that this is an entire ecosystem, sort of like the card schemes that has been built, and that is not getting enough attention. Or even if it's getting attention, it's still limited to financial inclusion of a poor person who's trying to do this and this. And I understand that there are people who are lacking in different markets. However, it's not looking at the different archetypes, the different how this is a day-to-day thing, that something like an M-Pesa is not just for somebody who's unbanked. It's not just the unbanked story anymore. It is diversification. It is seamless interaction. It is making your phone a wallet. It is diversification in that way that Africans have been able to build with quote unquote limited resources, or a mindset that Africans could not be able to do it. And that is the financial inclusion story, or the I like to look at it as financial diversification story that I want to hear more of. It's not just the unbanked population that these is. You know how that picture of this child in Kibera who has a fly roaming around their nose
Yeah.
constantly goes around? I don't like that. I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't like that limited view of how Africa should look like, because Africa is diverse. It has wealthy, it has poor, it has middle class, and all these people are living very different lives. So right now the solutions as Africans that we've built are very specific to our niche market, and I think that's the story that needs to go out more. That's the story even founders should tell more. That it's
Yeah.
not just on banking and banked, it is diversifying the whole ecosystem and meeting people where they are.
I love that. Moving away from the story of banking then banked to financial diversification. I
Yeah.
love it. Cool. The final question I love asking guests on our podcast is what I call wisdom nuggets. So I'd just like you to share with me either a book, a quote, a practice that's really kept you grounded and inspired you throughout your career. It could be one thing, it could be a couple of things. So go ahead, share with us your wisdom nuggets.
So for me, it's a couple of things. I am a Christian, so obviously the Bible keeps me very grounded. There's a requirement of excellence that falls in my life, so that has really guided me through and through. You know how the Proverbs calls you the fool, and then you get to realize that you are the fool that they're talking about. Yeah, that is my story. So understanding that being really slow to speak and listening more to people. So when you listen, you get to hear what they're not really saying, and you get to understand it better. The other things, it's a lot of life lessons. It's I love this book. I can't remember who's the author. It's not coming, but How to Win Friends and Influence People. The name of the author is not Dale Carnegie. Yes, Dale
Mm,
Carnegie. That taps into this thing of my life of people working with people. So you need to learn how to be an influencer of some sort. And it's a lot of politics, yes. However, there's a way you can play politics that doesn't get people, you don't step on people's toes or you don't get people offended, and it's not people pleasing. So that is one book that I really, really love. And then also just learning from different people. So one of the people who I have looked up to a lot in my life, and right now it makes a lot of sense, is my late grandfather. And ever since I was young, he used to constantly say that you have to be a person who's disciplined. You have to be a person who's disciplined. You have to be a person who's disciplined. And I realize right now when I look at people, sometimes I'm like, you lack discipline as a person. Some of your problems could be solved if you just had some discipline in your life. And that stems all across. It stems in your work life, it stems in your relationships, it stems in all these things. So, all that holistically really grounds me as a person. And then having those people in my life who can call me out when I have nonsense. Some of them are my siblings, some of them are very good friends of mine. So I have given people that access to actually call me out when I'm being foolish. And that has really helped as well. Yeah.
thank you so much, Grace. This has been so much fun. And thank you so much for your time. The conversations have been really, really engaging. I've enjoyed spending time with you today. Sad that we have to end the pod, but if there's anyone who would like to reach out to you on socials, how can they find you?
Mainly on LinkedIn, you can find me under Grace Anyetei. Send me a quick DM if you need to talk about something. I'm happy to. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much, Grace. Thank you so much for making the time. I have one last thing for you. Fun fact: you are the first
I
lady
thought
we've
you were
had
gonna give me
on the
money. I
pod.
thought you were gonna give me
Oh,
money. You know, I'll tell you,
money!
send,
You want
send.
money? I have something better than money. I have a thoughtful
Tell me.
gift for you.
Oh,
So
that's so nice.
yeah, I actually have a friend who runs a business. It's called Fuele,
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
she makes shea butter. So it's like a body butter. This is their most popular line, actually. I think it's vanilla. So this is
Oh,
my gift to you. Thank you so much
nice.
for
I
coming on
will
the
be
pod.
expecting to receive it. Thank
Cool,
you. Thank
cool.
you.
Yeah,
And I
I'll get.
interrupted you. You were saying something.
No, 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 no. That's it. That's it. So I was just saying I'll
All right.
get your details after and just send it to you. So I hope you
Sure
enjoy
thing.
this. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much for making the time. And we're looking forward to everything else you'll get to achieve in your career. You've already had a fantastic couple of years rising up in the ranks and being an inspiration to so many ladies and people out there. So, given that you're now a friend of the podcast, we'll check in on you and have you pop in sometime just to get updates
Thank
on what you're
you.
up to. Cool. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much for hosting me.
All
Okay.
right.
Cheers.
Bye bye.
Bye.